Remember back in Bridal Gossip when I said that real-life problems seeping into MLP kinda rubs me the wrong way, for reasons that are completely subject to my own personal interpretation of the show? Yeah, that discomfort is back and over a barrel. My issues with this episode kinda transcend that personal hiccup though, mostly because of the fact that a lot of the characters act and do stupid things, especially Pinkie Pie. The overall conflict, on top of not being my kind of thing to see in this show, felt doubly awkward when there were so many moments where it could have been resolved if not for the characters acting incompetent. And normally something like this works fine, because if a conflict is easily able to be resolved but isn't due to a character's own shortcomings, then the real conflict becomes a person versus self and not a person versus person, and allows for character development. The problem that I had with Over a Barrel is that I didn't see any of the characters as needing to have this kind of development, and as a result the whole conflict felt kind of forced. Sure, Rainbow Dash could be seen as someone who would latch onto a perspective unyieldingly and not budge on it, but she does exactly that once Little Strongheart explains the situation from the perspective of the buffalo. It's odd how she has a grudge against Strongheart, but immediately drops it once finer logic prevails, and yet can't do the same thing when an opportunity for diplomacy arises once they arrive in Appaloosa. Applejack is also a bit out of character, I felt, as she has been characterized strongly throughout Season 1 as the most mature and the voice of reason, but just like in Ghostbusters, here she fails to showcase that trait, and again resorts to hasty antagonism. This issue is compounded even further when it's clear that Strongheart and Brayburn are willing to talk and come to an agreement, but our main cast prevent this from happening, essentially making them the main antagonists of the episode, which obviously by extension makes Strongheart and Brayburn the main protagonists, and as such the characters that we feel the most sympathy for and a connection to in the context of this conflict. Unfortunately, we rarely see them outside of their establishing scenes, and they come off feeling criminally underused. No one gets the shorter end of the characterization stick though than Pinkie Pie. Pinkie is goofy and illogical, yes, but in Over a Barrel, Dave Polsky hits her with the stupid stick a few times, and she acts like a contrived and unnecessary antagonizer in the third act to rekindle the main conflict that really didn't need to be rekindled at all. I'm assuming this is supposed to be a gag, but to me it fell completely flat and just hurt Pinkie's overall characterization. And of course, everybody felt off during Pinkie's song and dance number as Chief Thunderhooves and Sheriff Silverstar both just wreck Pinkie Pie, and none of the main six decide to play defense on that.
That was the worst performance we've ever seen.
Evidently.
Like, really? Again, this is supposed to be a gag, but to me it just felt cruel. Of course, this awkwardness is redeemed a bit in the end of the episode where they bring the scene back with Twilight's moral and have Pinkie blatantly break the fourth wall to deliver the final punchline, which I thought was great. And that's what really carried this episode for me. The conflicts and overarching characterizations felt a bit off, but the dialogue and verbal gags were just fantastic. The whole opening scene with Applejack, Rarity, and Bloomberg was awesome, the banter at night and the birth of Cheesy Gordita Tree were just spot on, and the dialogue flowing in that scene was just beautifully done. Overall, there are some great isolated moments in this episode, and some fantastic one-liners, but the conflict and characterization really weren't working for me all that well, so this is kinda low on my personal favorites of Season 1. But again, like I said, my perspective on this kind of episode is heavily skewed, so take all of this with a grain of salt.
If we could just sit down and talk, we could...